Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Daily Manchester United. Let's do what we do best and look at the past and reminisce. Wasn't everything so nice back then, eh? Absolutely. Yes, let's do that even more. My name is Kieran McGinley and I'm delighted to say on this Wildcard Wednesday I'm joined by the fantastic Mr. Sam Brady. Sam, how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good. I know maybe some rival fans might hate this episode because it's United fans reveling on the past. But hey, it's a Wildcard Wednesday, so we get to choose what we talk about. And yeah, I mean, I think enough's been said about the result on the weekend. So let's have maybe a bit of positivity midweek.
Bit of positivity. That's all what we all need at this point after that Palace result and seeing the FA Cup coming up on Friday. Brace yourselves because Sam and I have been discussing, there's a bit of an age gap between us, about 5 years, it's fair to say, Sam. And we were discussing before we hit the record button, what were the first seasons you properly remember? Now, I was a lad who was raised on motorsport first, and so football took a bit of a back seat for me. It's weird how I got into supporting Manchester United in the first place. But just as King Eric once said, you can change everything about your life, your car, your wife, your house, but you can never change your football club. And that's a mantra I've stuck by. So in terms of my first footballing memories, it's probably linked to FIFA 10. So you're looking at the 09-10, maybe 2010-11 period. And that's a stacked team. That's the team that's maybe getting towards the twilight of the season. But I mean, I'm reading off some names here. David De Gea, he's absolute. He wasn't at his prime just yet, but he was getting there. And boy, was he on fire. I mean, you had Raphael and Patrice Evra down the fullback options. Phil Jones and Ferdinand teaming up together. Sorry, that's 2012-13. We'll come on to that later. Van der Sar in goal in 2010-11. Gary Neville in, I believe, was his final season before he was ran past, and that's when he decided that was it. He was hanging up the boots that season. Patrice Evra, Rio Ferdinand, Wes Brown making a bit part appearance, and even Michael Owen turning up for the books at Manchester United. Caused a stir with the Liverpool fans who weren't sure about him at that point. But it's okay because he scored in the Manchester derby and that's all that matters. He scored the winner in I think it was the 6th minute of 4 added minutes or something like that. Yeah. Fergie time was never real. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, that season, we were speaking about it before we obviously hit record. Obviously, that season got to the Champions League final, once again against that Barcelona team who were utterly unreal. Probably the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest team in football history. But I mean, our team was incredible as well. Obviously, losing Ronaldo, it was always going to be, I mean, how do we replace him? Would it be difficult? But I mean, as Sir Alex does what he does best, I mean, he rebuilt a new team without CR7, without arguably at the time the best player in the world, and gets to another Champions League final. And I mean, not a bad first season to have your first memories there, Kieran. So.
No, not really. Yeah, as I say, I do remember Ronaldo being sold in 2009, and I remember, that 80 million transfer was a world record fee. Yeah, thanks to Barcelona and Neymar for coming along and absolutely obliterating that one. Actually, it wasn't Barca, it was PSG's fault. There you go, PSG. Yeah. They set a ridiculously high release clause, thinking no one would ever pay for this, and PSG came along and said, "Oh, we'll pay for it. That's all right."
Yeah.
Sorry, what? But that was when the 80 million was madness that you could buy a Ronaldo with 80 million. 80 million 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, managed to get you the highest paid or the highest transfer fee for a defender in the Premier League for Harry Maguire. And I mean, that's not the player's fault. I'm not having a bash at the player. I'm just saying that inflation works in mysterious ways that now 80 million can buy you a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy to think about it. To think you could literally buy the best player in the world who just won the Ballon d'Or for 80 million, and we got Harry Maguire and Anthony for the exact same price. And I mean, we paid the same price, 80 million, for an Anthony who was for playing for us for 2 seasons. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you mentioned there your first season, but on sort of Ronaldo and him being the best player in the world, my start of my memories a bit, not fully, but bits, and this is probably going to obviously expose a little bit of our age, but yeah, mine was the 07-08 season, actually, when, of course, we won the Premier League and the Champions League in Moscow. And yeah, I was, 6 years old when that season was going on. And
that's
I
terrible.
just remember it was incredible. We had the game in the Champions League, I believe, that season against Arsenal, away at the Emirates, when Ronaldo scored that absolute banging free kick from like 40 yards out past Mooney in the blue kit. I believe that was the season. We beat Barcelona in the semi-finals. Scholes, absolute belter from like 25 yards out to get us through to the final. And then on a wet, absolutely horrendous weather conditions in Moscow, played Chelsea, who obviously we were challenging for the league at that point against. And fair play to Chelsea, they had an unreal team as well, with Lampard and Drogba and Ballack. I mean, but our team, going back and looking at our team then, it's just unbelievable. I mean, Ronaldo, Tevez, Rooney, Ferdinand, Vidic, Van der Sar. And I mean, again, fair play to Chelsea. They held their own in terms of it was a good game for the neutral. Obviously, Ronaldo with the header putting us 1-0 up, and then their goal sort of Lampard exposed Van der Sar slip. But yeah, went into penalties, and yeah, we all know what happened. Amazing night for us. Coincidentally, Ronaldo actually missed his penalty in that penalty shootout. But yeah, I mean that was where sort of my first memories as a United fan sort of comes from, when I was 6 years old, watching that, and I was like, can't get any better than this. This is, I mean, I've chose the right team to support here because they're winning everything.
Yeah, it felt good, didn't it? It felt like, turning up to school, and you had all the Manchester United gear, and it was like everyone hated you because your team was so good, and you made that your entire personality at one point. I still remember the days when Nani got sent off in the Champions League for a foul that wasn't a foul. You remember that? That was years ago.
When was that?
That was against Real Madrid, because it was when Mourinho was in charge, and he said at the time, a very famous saying, the better team lost, because Real Madrid went on to win that game after sending off.
Did Ronaldo play for Madrid in that game?
He did.
Yeah, he scored, didn't he, at Old Trafford?
Thanks for reminding me, Sam. Yeah, thanks for that.
yeah. I remember that, yeah.
It might have been 2013, I want to say.
Yeah, it was a bit later, yeah. Because that was when Fergie had left as well, and wasn't it? Was it? It might have been like his last season. And I can remember our team, I don't think was that great. I mean, as I said, I remember bits of the 07-08 season, but I'd say my full, as a season length, what I can properly remember is actually Fergie's last season, is the 12-13 season. Because I just remember, because obviously back then there was no Fabrizio Romano, there was none of these transfer rumours going about. So I remember I was on holiday in Italy. I would have been 10 years old, something like this. And I remember me and my brother got a newspaper in the morning, and that's when we first heard that Van Persie had signed for United. On the back page of the newspaper, none of this Fabrizio spoiling it for us 2 weeks in advance or anything. Proper football back then.
Don't say proper football. Come on, Sam. You're better than that. But I see what you mean.
I loved it when transfers weren't ruined a week before. I loved it when you just woke up in the morning and found out, boom, your club had signed this player, or boom, your player had left. You know what I mean? Because at that time, Van Persie was probably the best striker in the league, if not in the world. And to wake up and be like, oh, we've just whacked out however much it was. Don't even think it was that much now. Don't quote me on this, but I feel like it might have been around 30 million, something like this, for Van Persie at that time. I was like, that's crazy. Well, obviously 30 million back then was a lot of money, but yeah, I mean, signed him, and obviously that was the season after the Aguero Man City season. So I mean, Van Persie is basically exactly what we needed at that time. And to be honest, it was Fergie's last season. Our squad wasn't great, so there was obviously talk of, are we going to win another league or whatever? And to do what we did in that season, and Van Persie that season was just unbelievable. I remember
The volley against Villa.
Yeah, the volley against Villa. When it was basically that confirmed that we won the league. I remember I was going to say he scored on his debut, I believe, against Fulham, like a half volley on the edge of the box. He scored a hat trick away at Southampton. I remember because that Southampton team were pretty decent. They had the likes of Schneiderlin, Lambert, I think, Mane maybe, and they went 2-0 up. I remember this game at St Mary's, and then we came back to win 3-2, Van Persie hat-trick. It was in the white kit. I don't know if you remember. It was like fully white with like the red line.
The red and black. I remember it very well indeed, yes.
And Van Persie that season was just unbelievable. That's why I say that might have been the season we played Real Madrid in the Champions League, maybe, because I don't remember that season us going far in the Champions League. So it might have been that, but I just remember the league. Fergie's obviously last season, his last ever game, I mean, against West Brom, 5-5, Lukaku hat-trick. I mean, who would have thought it? Now Lukaku went on to eventually play for us, and then now he's at Napoli, 5-5. I just remember some crazy matches in that season. So yeah, I mean.
We've got plenty more to reminisce about, Sam. But first, before we get into really reminiscing even more than we have now, we'll have a quick word from our sponsors.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
We've got to be careful that this doesn't turn into reminiscing about how transfer windows used to be. But with Fabrizio Romano here, you will never, ever get a transfer saga like Michael Essien ever again. You will never get it again, will you? Because you won't have him turning up for a Manchester United press conference and then all of a sudden he's in a Chelsea shirt. Oh, hang on. Roman's on the phone. He's signed for Chelsea. I mean, what a bizarre time. I mean, fantastic player, Essien. Not to sort of harp on about a Chelsea player, but I think we all know the goal I'm talking about. The volley, the sort of outside of the foot volley. What a goal. Yeah. I will always put that down as one of the best goals in the Premier League. But look, we're not here to talk about Chelsea players. Could have talked about you, Michael, if you were a United player. But we'll leave it there. We were talking about how, it's been great to sort of reminisce. But obviously, things come with a bit of a price. The higher the pride, or the bigger the pride, the harder the fall. And no case is stronger than when Ferguson retired. And David Moyes was hand-selected to take the reins of Manchester United. Looking back, 12 years ago now, I don't think Moyes was given the full backing not only of the board, but he took over an ageing side. As you've already mentioned, when we talk about the 2012-13 season, this was a side that had a lot of talent, but a lot of talent that was turning towards veteran status. You still had Rio Ferdinand in the back line there. You had Dimitar Berbatov, who didn't really play and obviously was sold later on. I mean, you even had Nemanja Vidic. I mean, what a player he was. Carrick was he was used quite a lot in that 2012-13 season, but he was starting to get towards the end of his time at Manchester United. Paul Scholes, brought back specifically to help win the title, made 8 appearances and a further 8 from the bench, so 16 in total. So you kind of think there that maybe Ferguson took over a side that needed a bit of a rebuild, something that Ferguson was really, really good at. And it was lacking that experience in really turning over a side, which is what Ferguson had done for the last 20-odd years.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic, really. We've harped on about it this season, about players not giving their all and maybe them having the individual quality but not putting in the effort and not sort of playing for the shirt. When you actually look at Fergie's last season, like, really, okay, there's in some individuals there's quality there, but as you've already mentioned, the players that had quality before were aging. Like Giggs was still there as well. We didn't mention he was 39. As you mentioned, Scholes coming out of retirement. I mean, when would that happen nowadays? It just wouldn't. So yeah, it was aging players with quality, and then it was youngsters, really, to be honest, that were just on the peripherals. I mean, you had like Tom Cleverley and Fabio and Raphael, and you had a mixture of veterans who knew weren't going to be in the squad for much longer, and youngsters coming through, and then obviously Van Persie, one of the greatest strikers in the league. So yeah, for Moyes to come in when he did, and obviously the pressure and expectation of taking over from Sir Alex, and what a job he did with the club, I think he was always set up to fail, really. I think we look back now, and we look back and do go, Fergie basically got out at the right time, in terms of that squad probably weren't going to win another league, and there was a massive rebuild to be done. It wasn't the same as maybe if you compare it now to Arne Slot at Liverpool, taking over the reins from Klopp and the legacy he left at Liverpool. Whereas actually Klopp left Arne Slot with a championship winning squad. They only won the league a couple seasons ago. Whereas, yeah, you could say that about Moyes, but really, you could say that on the base level, but if you actually deep dived into our squad and the individuals we sold that summer or who retired, then it was always going to be hard for Moyes. And look, should we have given him more time? I'm not too sure, just because of how bad it got. But anyone in Moyes' shoes would have struggled, to be honest. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. It was a tough act to follow. One of the English Premier League's greatest ever managers, especially in the modern era we're talking about here, one of the greatest. To follow that act is impossible. It is impossible. And I think it's interesting you raise the point of comparing Ferguson having to leave off for Moyes having to take over, and Slot taking over from Klopp. I think those are two different scenarios.
Yeah,
because you have Klopp, who is going to be always loved and adored in Liverpool, and I have to say, very jealous when Klopp was announced to be Liverpool manager. Very, very jealous. Always wanted Klopp at Manchester United. As soon as I saw that move, I thought, well, that's never happening, is it? That will never happen. That dream dies here. And what Klopp did to sort of change that around to a team that was, round about the Europa League and Champions League chasing club, to actually winning a Premier League, winning a Champions League as well. I mean, you can call it a COVID Cup if you want. They won the Premier League. Any team would be saying they won the Premier League at that.
Yeah, they didn't just win one Champions League as well. They won one Champions League, but got to two other finals. So as you're mentioning, the turnaround that Klopp did was incredible to that team. But
I think as well, what we've got to remember is Slot, yes, he's taken over a great side, but it's not without its pitfalls. There are a lot of players there that are on the last year of their contract. And Salah's already said in the media that he's going to move on, and he wants to move on. He wants a new challenge. So it's coming into part two of the problem, where you've now got to replace those veteran players. And that is a very difficult thing to do when you're new in town and you've got to leave a mark on your own system. But I mean, that's another case for another day, because we'll talk about, and when we come back, we'll talk about probably our favourite season post-Ferguson. And there is such a thing. I promise you that. Sam and I have picked them out. But we'll be back to talk about them after this message.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasts, with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcast in 5 different languages. It's your one-stop shop for your daily footballing fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Wow, post-Ferguson, hey? What a time. And there's plenty of managers that have been and gone at Manchester United. You know, you've got David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho. I mean, all of them great managers in their own right. Jose Mourinho, a manager who needs no introduction. We've also had Ten Hag in that period as well. We had that Ralph Ragnick sort of interim period, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as well as cameo appearances from the likes of Ryan Giggs, and even Michael Carrick has had a turn, and Ruud van Nistelrooy as well. So we've had quite a few managers pass through the doors here. But Sam, I'm going to ask you first because I selfishly stole away the first question of the podcast. Let me hear your favourite post-Ferguson season.
Yeah, see, this is an interesting one because if you just want to talk about success and sort of success and trophies and results based, I mean, for me, there's only one place really, and that's under Jose Mourinho, and I believe it was his first season at United. I mean, brought in Zlatan, you obviously had Pogba there as well, and then the first season, I believe it was incredible. Obviously, winning the League Cup, beating Southampton in the final in what turned out to be an unbelievable game. Went 2-0 up in that. And then they scored 2 goals. I remember Gabbiadini, he scored twice, made it 2-2. And then with about a couple minutes before the 90, Zlatan gets up for the header. I remember Herrera chipped it in and Zlatan on the header won us that final. And then Europa League, of course, what a journey that was. I remember Mkhitaryan was the hero of the Europa League that year, scoring
I
many.
forgot all about Mkhitaryan.
I mean, that season he scored so many important goals in the Europa League. I actually went to one of the Europa League games live that year. I remember we played Anderlecht in the knockout rounds. And I remember we won the game. It went to extra time, but it wasn't without drama. I mean, we went 1-0 up and then they scored. So on away goals, it went to extra time. And then, I mean, it's sad times to say this, obviously, with his move to Villa, but Marcus Rashford that day got the winner in extra time. And he was only a young boy there for United, and now obviously making his move to Villa. But enough about that. But yeah, that season, and then we went on to win the Europa League. I remember we played Celta Vigo again. Marcus Rashford scored an absolute banging free kick away at Celta, and then in the final we had. Let me try and remember this. We had in the final. I remember Pogba scored. Antonio Valencia scored. We had who did we have now in that?
We had Ajax in the
Ajax,
final.
Ajax, that's it. Yeah. Because I remember they actually had Onana in goal. So
time flies.
Time flies when you win and stuff, eh? So
tell me about it.
Obviously, the downfall for that season, and that season, I guess. I mean, we came second in the league as well, behind City, which in retrospect is really good. And Mourinho obviously called it in afterwards his best achievement ever, getting that United team to second in the league. So yeah, I mean, results based, success based. Very good, but obviously style of play is what ultimately cost Mourinho his job in the end. So.
Yeah, well, that was actually Mourinho's first season, and he actually finished 6th in that Premier League. But yes, you're right. He won the Europa League and he won the EFL Cup. So league title, League Cup and a Europa League. Next season, 17-18, he finished 2nd. You're absolutely spot on there. And yes, he said that was his greatest footballing achievement, which goes a long way. I mean, Jose was always one to sort of give the press the headlines they wanted, give the press releases. And whilst I've always got that soft spot for Mourinho at Manchester United, I've also, I don't know, the managers we've had come through the doors who have been and gone, I don't think have been, I mean, it feels harsh to say this, but none of them were what we needed at the time. And whilst Mourinho is really good at coming into a club and working with what he's got, and saying, right, I'm going to assess the squad. I'm going to play you in the positions that I feel is best and get the best out of you, just like he did at Chelsea thrice over and win trophies at that point. But I don't know what it was, and I've said this on this podcast before. I don't know what it is about the longevity of a Mourinho managerial career. He doesn't stay for long, and you'll argue the Tottenham one is nowhere near his fault. He was sacked days before a cup final.
Yeah.
But in the case of Manchester United, when things weren't going right, in the case of Chelsea, 3 times things started to go sour. He managed to turn the siege mentality of it's us against them. It's us players against the media, against everybody else. He managed to make it everyone versus Mourinho.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many times it's happened so often that it's often the players not really turn on you, but where you're trying to get that siege mentality, it doesn't work anymore. Everything starts to crumble away. But for Mourinho, the fact that he brought in Ibrahimovic then as a catalyst was like, oh yeah, I'm the one that signed Pogba, by the way. That's all to me. I mean, again, Ibra's probably one of my post-Ferguson players of all time, just dropping 17 goals in the Premier League when the media was saying he's finished, he won't cope in the Premier League. I don't think 17 goals in the Premier League was that bad.
He was unbelievable for us.
Oh, he was so good.
Scored on his debut against Bournemouth away, and then
I had been harping on to my friends for years. I'm like, I love Zlatan. I'd love to see him at the club. And the longer he wasn't there, he'd been to, sold away by Barcelona, by Pep himself, to Milan, and then to play for PSG, and I thought he might stay there for a while. And I forget which order this is. He had an MLS stint in there, and I think that might have been after Manchester United. Then he came back to Serie A, and whatever level of football he played at, he was just amazing. And what a player! Aged like a fine wine.
Can I just say as well, we've just mentioned that in the same season, by the way, and we haven't even mentioned one other person, but we've mentioned Ibrahimovic, Mourinho, and then obviously you've got to throw Pogba into the mix as well. What personalities we had at the club at that time. I mean, you look at it and on one hand you go, wow, you've got talent there, you've got winners, but on the other hand you go, I was never going to work with those clash of personalities. I mean, that's what I was going to say on the Mourinho thing in terms of, I think by the end, a lot of things sort of were the combination of why we got rid of him in the end. I think the style of football and the expectation of how a Manchester United team should play in comparison to the reality of what we were actually playing under Mourinho he was under pressure for that. But I also think his relationship with Paul Pogba, I mean, that got sour very quickly. And I think the owners had a decision to make whether do we get rid of one of our biggest stars here or do we get rid of the manager? And I think it was an easy decision by the end. But yeah, I mean, the personalities we had in that was, and obviously we had Eric Bailly as well. He was another weird and wonderful character as well.
Never fit to play, unfortunately, but it would have been a good player had it not been for the injuries, that's for sure. Yeah. Just my final word, I think one of my favourite matches that I remember watching in full, 2016 FA Cup final. That to me, in terms of drama, it had everything. It had the red card for, was it Chris Smalling?
Yeah, Smalling. He pulled down Balassi when Balassi went past him.
Yeah. And then for to be down to 10 men, then for Palace to score, Pardew to do his little dance.
Yeah, Jason punching,
sickening. And then for it to equalise, and then for Lingard to get the winner. Oh, what a volley. And then, you're just holding on for 120 minutes. Like, please don't let them score. I can't go through penalties after going through this.
Because also, what I remember about that cup run is in the semi-final, we played Everton at Wembley, and we also scored in the 90th minute to beat Everton as well. I remember, I think Martial scored in the 90th minute to go to the final, and then the final obviously speaks for itself. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And another season, just quickly, I want to give an honourable mention to, because, as I said, success and where we finished and sort of trophies-wise, it's Mourinho. But in terms of an atmosphere and the mood post-Fergie, I don't think we've had a better atmosphere and mood as fans since Ollie first came in, and when he was not even manager, when he was caretaker, and it was Ollie at the wheel, and we were battering teams left, right, and centre. I remember when Ollie came in as caretaker, his first game, we beat Cardiff 5-0 away at Cardiff. I think Lingard scored, and we had Martial, we had Rashford firing, and then obviously the famous night in Paris where, I mean, we were 2-0 down in the first leg of the Champions League. Everyone wrote us off. We had kids playing. I think we had Chong playing. We had Lukaku up front in the pink kit with Rashford. And then the drama in that game as well. We obviously we were 2-0 down. We scored once and then they scored. So obviously it was 3-1 on aggregate. Then we scored twice and then 90th minute penalty. You can't script it any better. And again, we'll look back at his United career with fond memories, but Marcus Rashford doing what he does best for United and best in the United shirt, stepping up and bagging the penalty past Buffon and sending us crazy. And that's when you got that video on BT as well with Rio Ferdinand, like give him the contract, put whatever he wants on it. So
let him write whatever number he wants and sign it.
I mean,
Man
I don't
United are
think
back.
with Fergie, there's been a better mood around the club and around the fans than that, to be honest. Obviously, it didn't work out in the end, but you know.
See, this is the thing, and this is why I love reminiscing, because the rose-tinted glasses come in. The Ollie period was not without its, its very, very, blatant red flags.
Yeah.
In the fact that defensively we weren't that solid. No. We normally relied on the other team scoring first to give us the boost that we needed to actually go on and do well in the game, if we did do well in the game. I think, yeah, you're right. In terms of how Ollie focused it back on the youth and bringing the youth through the system, a very good move. And I've always said that when it's almost as if the board went over Ollie's head to bring back Ronaldo, and that sort of the clash of personalities, the clash of heads there between Ollie and Ronaldo. And then they both left within 2 years anyway, one willingly, one not so willingly. Either way, within 2 years, it seemed like all of that hard work that Ollie had put in to sort of start putting the patches over, and they were patches, let's face it, they were patches, seemed to be undone. And then obviously we bring in, I think that was Ten Hag, who followed afterwards, and here we are. We're back to the present.
It's crazy to bring it to the present. If you look at Ole's last team away at Watford, his last game, our attack that day was Sancho, Bruno, Rashford, Ronaldo. I mean, on paper, that's an unreal attack compared to our attack now, where you don't even have a striker starting. They're both on the bench, and then you've got Ahmad and Garnacho. I mean, I know what attack I'm taking, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I mean, and that's sort of where we're at in present day in terms of we, under Ollie and Mourinho, we were saying the squad isn't good enough and the players aren't good enough. When actually you look at our team now and you go, no, this isn't good enough. We maybe had the right squad back then, but maybe not the right manager. Whereas now we've spent nearly $1 billion and the squad's got worse. So, I mean, only we could do that, really.
Now, come on, Sam. It's Wildcard Wednesday. Good vibes only. Good vibes only. Sorry. Right. To sum up this part 3, then, I need your favourite manager post-Ferguson era.
Okay.
It's a tough one, but
yeah, it is a tough one, and I am flip-flopping between Ole and Mourinho, but I think to go on success and on just as a character for our club, I'm gonna have to go Mourinho. I just am. I mean, Ole, he'll always be loved at United. I mean, he's absolute legend, and to be honest, what he probably did for us as a club for longevity, probably obviously definitely better than Mourinho in terms of the vibes around the club. But Mourinho winning us the Europa League and winning us the League Cup, I don't think you can ignore that. And the players we had, Ibra, Pogba, Mkhitaryan, I really liked the squad that we had at the time as well. So just hoped it obviously ended up better, but never does with Mourinho, as you've said.
Yeah, again, I have to give a big shout out to Ollie. Obviously, he got a runner-up in the Premier League as well. That's often overlooked, probably by me as well, because it's just popped into my head, oh yeah, we did finish runner-up with Ollie. So maybe I'm bashing him too hard. I think I agree. In terms of success, Mourinho has to be at the top of the list. One I didn't mention before we go and before we sign off, Van Gaal
Yeah.
Won't his total football or his five at the back won't be remembered too fondly. Di Maria never worked out, but the dive in front of the fourth official with the clipboard in hand, without doubt, that's going to live up here.
As a personality, post Fergie, he's right up there, Van Gaal, with the Mike Smalling, and then and then my players need to be horny, and then giving wine and pies at Christmas to the journalists, and his dive on the. I mean, what
Louis Van Gaal's Red Army.
Yeah. I mean, what a manager, really. I mean, any club with Van Gaal, you're going to be entertained week in, week out. I'll say that.
Definitely. I think so. We're both agreed then Mourinho probably our favourite manager in terms of success. We've both got vibes with Van Gaal and Ollie. And that brings us to the present day. Come on, Ruben, you can make the list. There is still time. We've still got your back. To be fair, I think we've backed you most despite any other manager that's come before.
I like how none of us mentioned Ten Hag there, I think.
It's too early for Ten Hag. Give it 3 or 4 years and we'll be looking back and thinking that style could have worked if we had the right play. But not yet. Your time will come, Eric. Don't you worry. But anyway, Sam, thank you for joining me on this Wildcard Wednesday. It's been a pleasure to put the rose-tinted glasses on and have a look back at the past.
All good. Yeah. It's been really good to, as you said, look back and. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to next week where I'm going to have to come back to the present and talk about what's gone wrong. So
it gives you a case of whiplash, doesn't it? Coming back to the present. But anyway, we'll look ahead to Friday as well. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for spending your Wildcard Wednesday with us. Make sure as well you're following us on all the social medias. It's GSPN Man United. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter or X if you're so inclined to call it either. We're also on Facebook if you want to join us there. We're also on TikTok, if it's still legal in America. Sorry, US. We have nothing to do with that. I say it every time, but it still feels like it needs an apology at some point. We are also on YouTube as well. Global Sports Podcast Network, LTD. Make sure you find our playlist and you can watch our lovely episodes and see our lovely faces. What a terrifying prospect for you. In the meantime, though, have a great rest of your Wednesday and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.